members. First of all, I'd like to commend the Commission on a job well done. Overall, I know you've had a lot of critics and cynics in the process, but I know how difficult the job that you have is, and I think overall, congratulations, you've had. There are a couple of changes that you have proposed in the charter I think are especially good. I believe putting a limit on non-referendum bonding is an excellent move on your part. I'm glad you did revisit that. Whether I concur with the number or not is of less consequence than we actually have a limit on that now, which I think is a good thing for the citizens of Danbury. Another that I think is a particularly good move for Danbury is moving the terms to 4 years. I was a little hesitant about that at first, but the more I thought about it, having been in both elected and appointed positions in this town, there is a big learning curve, and there's something to be said for a little more continuity in those positions. So I think that is a very wise move on your part. There is one section of the proposed changes a little concerns me a little bit. Not so much the intent, but the result as it's written. I have in the past, both as primarily as council, been very concerned about the wording of ordinances. Some very good ordinances have come forth before this company, the council and other commissions that had great intent. But as we know, intent is not how a law is interpreted. It's not how it's supposed to be interpreted. It's supposed to be interpreted as it's written. In Section 7-8, there was modifications made to the assessments or the ability of the town government to assess individual property owners as opposed to the general population. I understand the intent behind this change, and I think probably the intent has a lot of merit. I'm not going to argue the merits one way or the other. But the way it was worded is pretty much, if you read it literally, carte blanche. It allows the city to assess individual property owners in any instance that whatever administration is there so deems that is an accessible project. It's not definitive. Whereas the sewer and water is a very expensive process compared to very expensive language. This, in theory, it reminds me of my grandmother, a dear old lady that lived all these years in her home, and the city decided to curb her street. It did nothing for her house, but it was a value added, presumably, to the neighborhood. And she was assessed an amount equivalent to 3 months of her Social Security. Now, while it might not be much to somebody making, earning a salary, but to individuals whose incomes is very limited, these assessments can be devastating. Just think for a minute, what if you were without 2 or 3 months of your salary? That's how it is to people in these kind of positions. So if there's intent to do certain type of projects in an assessment mode, let's enumerate them. Let's not write one check for whatever administration happens to be in the corner office on any given year. The intent of the Highway or Public Works Department, all well good. The intent of the administration, all well good. The wording is bad. And I beseech you to please restrict the wording in that so that we are not, if you will, at the mercy of public works, because we as taxpayers, we pay all the bills. No matter how much the state says we bring to your city, we send a heck of a lot more to Hartford than Hartford sends to us. So we pay 100% of our bills here. In a tough financial year, an administration could say, wow, how about all these road projects? We can put this on assessment. We don't have to put it in our budget. That could happen. That could really happen. And that's just one little example, but that's the way this is worded now. There's just no restriction on really what can be assessed to the property owners. Again, it's a matter of who's interpreting the value added, or as it's worded, what gets assessed. It's just too broad. But again, back to the beginning, I thank you for your efforts. Overall, a job well done. I think there's just that one little refinement that is not a little refinement. It's a big issue for the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Thank you. Anybody else from the public? No?
First, I'd like to thank you, Carla, for coming on the show. You did a really good job explaining it to the public. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off with the terms of office of 4 years. I can live with the 4 years, but I am very concerned about the length of the ballot. Think of the three top offices: 21 councilmen, 11 Board of Ed members, 9 zoning members, 3 alternate zoning board members, 5 constables, and the zoning commission. That's a total of 52 positions on one ballot every 4 years. I personally think it's much too much. Would you please give some consideration to splitting the ballot? For example, elect the mayor, the treasurer, the town clerk, and councilman 1 year, and then 2 years later, elect the zoning commission and the Board of Ed. That kind of averages it out so that there's approximately 25 on each of the 2 ballots. And there could be an unexpected benefit to splitting the ballot, as I suggested, if you had an ordinance or a referendum or something else that needs to go to an election. You would have something else on the ballot that would bring people out besides just the question or the referendum on bonding. And it wouldn't cost that much because you're already running a ballot. It would take you all writing it into the charter, I believe, in the beginning to get that started. But it would divide it. I mean, can you see filling in those little holes for 52 rolls all the way down the ballot? It would take forever to get it done. Section 3.3, I'd like to see the legislative assistant appointed by the council and approved by the mayor. I don't like the 2 branches of government, legislative and executive, being that totally combined. This assistant can always reach a council president by phone if necessary for city business. One of your reasons for doing it the other way is the council president is not available, but he is by phone at all times, and they have been since I've been watching government. Number 3 is referendum. The number of signatures needed. I know you changed it down to 10%, and thank you very much for that. That's 3,400 signatures, and actually it's probably going to be more, because in order to ensure that you have enough registered voters, you've got to get approximately another 400 or 500 over and above, because people don't remember whether they're registered or they're registered in another town and they don't want to turn you down, and it's always tested. 5% is 1,700 signatures, and 3% is 1,020 signatures, with the 34,000 people that are registered today. I believe it should be 5% or 3%. And if any of you have ever tried to collect signatures of registered voters, all 3 numbers are unattainable in 30 days. I've done it. It's impossible. These numbers effectively close out the voter in the process. So please reconsider this. I too wanted to speak to 7.8, page 27, the public improvement assessments. I am very uncomfortable with the wording here that refers to public works or improvements. If it was added to cover private roads becoming public roads, then you should say so. I was told that that was the intent, but even if it is the intent of this commission or this administration, no one knows what a future mayor may read in this portion of the charter. Curbs, paving roads, parks, neighborhoods could eventually be charged to homes and neighborhoods. If the wording in this portion is allowed to stand, please revisit it. We just had our Highland Avenue Park fixed up, and if they can say, oh, that makes your house more valuable because you live near it and you could then advertise you live near a park, they might be able to assess my house for the improvements to the Highland Avenue Park. So I'm very concerned about that. Section 7-10 on borrowing. Again, I feel that people are being closed out of this process. $2.5 million per project. That may be okay, but I remember one citizen speaking before you as commission and said even with inflation from 1977, that figure should only be $1.5 million. We, the public, don't get to vote until the administration needs more than $5 million per year. A number I feel is much too high. Don't get me wrong, I'm very relieved you have a cap. I just wish it were lower. I would also like to praise you for not combining planning and zoning. I really believe the public is better served by having 2 times to speak before commissions. Page 31, 8.3. I believe this should not include, this is conflict of interest. I believe it should not just include elected officials, employees, but their extended families as well. I know of several situations where other relatives of people that worked here got jobs in companies doing different things for the city, and I'm uncomfortable with that. I appreciate you're doing the periodic review of the charter. I think that's an excellent idea so that it doesn't go 30 years before we do it again. So I also sincerely want to thank you for all your hard work on the charter, and that includes you, Mr. Crenshaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Somebody else like to address us?
I'll say a few words anyway. Good evening, everybody. Greg Williams, 104 Franklin Street. I've watched several of these meetings on the tapes that you all were able to provide the public. Thanks, Ms. Waller, for doing that. So I just wanted to commend you first and foremost for spending an enormous amount of time. I'm sure this has been fun and exciting in some instances. Like me, I'm a concerned citizen, like the few that are here, and probably a lot of folks that probably talk about it in town that just aren't able to get here. But some of my concerns, of course, these people have already eloquently stated in retrospect of farm. I think it's a little bit too much money for one individual or one administration to handle on one aspect. The legislative assistant position, I think, blends between executive and the legislative branch. I think that person should be, in a sense, that you all have spoken, a learning curve. You should probably hire somebody, and that should probably go through civil service, that you have the appropriate person to do the appropriate job versus somebody who's appointed who may or may not be a fit for the position and more political aspect. I do believe in the aspect of assessing our public works as far as improvements and in the sense of assessing the homeowner. I think that's something that you all should look at. I want to go back. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but in retrospect of the council and the legislative assistant, I do believe that the council should have more of a, a community outreach perspective in their wards, because they are elected through the constituents who inhabit their wards. And it seems as soon as they get elected here and in the processes of the council, their voice kind of gets silent, and it gets to be bubbled up, I'd say, in a sense, to the few or the many that have power that make decisions in this state. I do believe that the council, in a sense of having responsibility for the legislative assistant's budget or salary, should constitute the council having a budget to operate and do the things that they need to do as the legislative branch of the city of Danbury. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much. I commend you guys again for doing this hard work, and thanks again for letting me speak.
Hold on a minute.
Yes.
Before you run away. The last point you made is you think the council needs its own budget?
Yes, I do, because if you're going to have a legislative assistant, in my opinion, that's working solely for the council, and that person, as it states now, is appointed, well, we as a city are still paying that individual, and they work primarily for the council. I'm speaking from the past and being on the council myself, it seemed that I worked, and many other council people before me, during me, and probably after me, worked very hard in getting votes in their particular wards or districts. But then as soon as they get here, it just seems that you don't hear a lot of what the council people do in their communities in order to reach out to their constituents who voted for them, in a sense of being that elected official that is in contact with the public, that everyday person who inhabits their ward. So I do feel that the council should impose a little bit more power in governing themselves and having the people or the resources to actually do what we elect them to do, I think.
Okay, so the follow-up question is, so you'd be in favor of the council hiring?
I would be in favor of the council hiring, or in a sense of hiring a legislative assistant for the approval of the mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any other members of the public that would like to address us? Seeing none, we'll close the public session, the public hearing. Thank you all. Your input has been valuable throughout the process, so it's been fun. Now, I think I need to call to order our special meeting. I now call it to order. Mr. Gottschalk, did you want to